First of all, lovely to see familiar faces. Welcome back, those who've heard me before. Up till now, I was wondering, I was considering what we should speak about. Up till now, we've been speaking from the perspective of the speaker. The problem with somebody who speaks Lashon Hara, speaks negatively about others. I actually thought today perhaps we should look at the other side of the coin, the listener, which I don't think we've spoken about. Actually, we haven't spoken about the perspective of the listener. And I encourage you to ask questions. We can either pause in the middle, or you can just raise your hand with the digital hand raiser if you have a question in the middle. According to Jewish law, and as we've already said in previous classes, that although this is Jewish law, all of this is it's not ritualistic, it's very, very understood. It's about living a healthy and productive life, and therefore applies to whether to Jewish people or to people who are not Jewish, who would like to live with the wisdom of Judaism and the wisdom of God. According to Jewish law, not only is a person not allowed to speak Lashon Hara, speak negatively about somebody else, they're also not allowed to believe it. Meaning, on the side of the listener, if somebody comes along and tells you something negative, you're not allowed to believe it. Now, that's difficult, and we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that a little bit later on today. But separate to that, the Chafetz Chaim, Rabbi Yisrael Meir Kagan, who wrote the book, the compendium that deals with the laws of negative speech, he proves from a verse in the Torah that not only are you not allowed to believe Lashon Hara that you heard, you're not even allowed to listen to Lashon Hara. Now, the question is why? Let's say I don't believe it. Let's say I'm not going to believe Lashon Hara. I've got a really, really good friend who he just comes along with he's just fun to be around. He's always got the best gossip. But I've learned from experience that the vast majority of what comes out of his mouth isn't really true. So what's wrong with me listening to him for entertainment? It's amazing. I'll sit and listen. We'll have laughs together. We'll crack open a Red Bull, a beer. We'll sit together. We'll get excited, and he'll tell me these stories, and I'll just let them wash over. But they're fun. I won't believe them. What's wrong with me listening to gossip when I won't believe it? So there are essentially three main reasons why listening to gossip, even when you won't believe it, is not allowed. And I will give you those headings. Number one, seepage. Number two, the word fence, which we'll talk about. And number three, gladiator. Those are my headings that I need to come back to. Seepage, fence, and gladiator. Let's start with seepage. Now, I have to speak about myself. I grew up in a home where I'm 48 now. Growing up, we didn't have screens like everybody does, like these things. We didn't walk around with screens. You either had a television in your home or you didn't have a television in your home. And I during my latter years in high school, I got addicted to soap operas. Now, I actually don't know if soap operas are still a thing. Perhaps they've been taken over by reality TV. I don't know. But in England, we call them soaps. We shortened it to soaps, soap operas. In England, you could watch two different types of soap operas. You could either watch British soap operas, like Coronation Street and EastEnders, where it was, I'm getting some nodding in the background, where it was always grey and raining, and the people weren't particularly attractive, to be honest, or you could watch Australian soap operas like Neighbours and Home and Away. And Neighbours and Home and Away it was like a different world. the sky was always blue, the sun was always shining, everybody was stunning, beach blonde. As soon as school finished, they went surfing. Jerry's nodding away over there. And I as a teenager, I got addicted to watching Australian soaps to the extent that I would watch them twice a day when I was off school for study leave or whatever. I would actually watch the lunchtime showing, and then I would watch the repeat, which was shown at 5:30 when the kids came home from school. Even though it was exactly the same, it was the same program, it was the same, there was no difference. But I was so addicted to it that I just loved watching this stuff. Anyway, that was it. I then went away when I was 18. I went away for 3 years to yeshiva. For those who don't know, yeshiva is essentially a Talmudic college, a college where we learn all about the deep fundamentals of Judaism and the Jewish law and Jewish thought and philosophy. And during that time, I mean, there's no television in a yeshiva. They really don't want you watching television. And essentially for 3 years, I didn't see a screen. Occasionally, if I was going to a friend's house or a family member for the weekend, perhaps I saw something on a television, but essentially I didn't see a TV for 3 years. And then I finished my yeshiva. I was heading back for university. And I thought to myself, I've got a little bit of spare time. Why not switch on the television and watch some Neighbours, one of these Australian soaps? After all, it's kids' TV. There can't be anything wrong with it. It's children's TV on at 5:30 in the afternoon. So I turned on the television and my mind was blown. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, because this children's television program was glorifying adultery. Now, I'll explain to you what I mean by that. As an example, there's this young lady, she's married. Her name is Sandy, and she's going through a difficult emotional time. And her husband doesn't get her. He's very busy with work, and he's just too busy. He's not with it, and he hasn't got the right words. And she's very sad. Anyway, you've been shown for the last 3 weeks that there's this really, really lovely guy at work, really sweet, lovely guy, and he's walking past, and he sees Sandy, and he says to Sandy, "Sandy, what's wrong?" And Sandy says, "I don't want to talk about it." So he says, no, come on. You need to share. You need to share. That's the only way. You have to offload. So they sit down together, and he holds her hand, and very quickly they end up in bed. Now, you don't see them ending up in bed because it's children's television, but you understand exactly what's happened and all the repercussions that have happened afterwards. And my mind was blown. I didn't understand. 3 years, over the last 3 years, has children's television got so much worse? And then I realized, no, it hadn't got so much worse. The reality is that it was exactly the same sort of storyline, rehashed, that I'd been watching throughout my teenage years. But what had happened was I hadn't realized it, because there was this slow build-up with the music and getting to know the characters seeping into my psyche until I'd been taken far away from my deep moral position that adultery is horrendously wrong. So what used to happen was I would be so happy for Sandy. I'd think, Sandy's finally found love. It's so exciting. I'm so happy for her. And then suddenly I was shown this screen, this program, after 3 years of being off it, and it suddenly hit me. This is what you actually enjoyed watching? This is what you cheered on? This is what they got you to appreciate and applaud? And I didn't realize it. This is actually a problem for the human psyche. It's the truth. If you are human, you have this issue. And that is that often we don't realize how things are seeping in to our psyche, changing our perspectives on things without us even. But if we were shown it straight on, we would say straight away, that is terrible. Look, I'll give you another example again from the screen. When I was young, I saw Titanic. Have you all seen Titanic? Right? If you haven't seen Titanic, sorry to spoil it for you. At the end, the ship sinks. Just in case you didn't know. But there's another storyline that's going on there. There is a lady who is engaged to be married. She is promised to somebody. She's promised to somebody. Now, I agree that the guy's a lowlife. I agree the guy's a lowlife, and she should end that engagement, of course. But right now, she's promised to somebody. And then she gets together for a one-night stand with a guy who you'll say, finally, she's found love. She hasn't really found love. At the end, she can't even find space on the wooden plank to save the guy from freezing to death. So she hasn't really found love. But the reality is that they play with your emotion. They show you the difficulty she's been in. And then you get this feel, amazing, finally. And yet, I think that if I was to ask every single person on this screen right now, and the truth is, if I was to ask most people in the world, put your hand up if you think it's okay to cheat on somebody when you are promised to them, when you were engaged to be married. I think the vast majority of people would say, I don't think that's okay. I don't think that's okay. And yet I would guess that most people who see Titanic don't even think about that. They're not even aware that that's going on. They're not even aware that they've been played, because it's all gently seeped in. I want to give another example, very, very different. I wear deodorant. It doesn't really affect you. I only ever meet you on the screen. But I wear deodorant. I've always had a particular brand of deodorant that I would get from England. Whenever I was in England, I would fly regularly to work as an optometrist. I would get my particular brand of deodorant. And then Corona hit and I couldn't fly anymore. And that's when I got more into teaching. But I ran out of deodorant, and they don't sell my particular brand in Israel, which is where I live. So my wife was going shopping. I said to her, Kate, that's my wife's name, Kate, would you mind buying me some deodorant? So she said, sure. Anyway, I came back from teaching that day. I opened the bathroom cabinet. There inside the bathroom cabinet was a new deodorant by a company called Gillette. I presume you've heard of Gillette. They make mainly male body care products like shaving creams and razors and deodorants and other stuff like that. Okay. Now, I was interested by this. I went over to my wife and I said to her, Kate, do you mind me asking you a question? Of all the different deodorants you could have bought, why did you choose this one? And she said to me, she sort of gave me a smile, and she said, well, Gillette, the best a man can get, which for us growing up for 20 years was Gillette's jingle in their ad campaign. Now, my wife is a very intelligent, very grounded, very thought out lady. And if I was to sit down with her and I was to say, 1 second, do you really believe that Gillette is the best a man can get? She'd say, of course not. No, of course it isn't the best a man can get. It's just the reality is that even though she doesn't believe it, the years and years and years of programming have seeped in. And when she's faced with all those different products, that is the one she goes for. This is the reality of being a human. Whether you like it or not, and whether you believe it or not, the things that you hear, especially if they're in a drip, build up, affect your perspectives. Even if you actually don't believe in them, they change your morals or your moral position, even if it's far away from what your real morals would be if you were thinking about it straight on. And that's the problem with listening to Lashon Hara. If you're listening to people who are saying negative things about others, you may not believe it, but it's still getting in there. And it's sort of hanging in your brain. And you may not believe it, but it's still affecting your perspective. Every single one of you has been told a story about a friend of yours, something negative. And it's played on you and played on you and played on you and played on you, and you wish you hadn't heard it. And you're thinking to yourself, but it's my friend and it can't be true. And you don't believe it, but it's still in there, getting at you like a cockroach. Wouldn't it be better to not have our thoughts dirtied like that? Look, I'm sure you've all seen, you all know about legal cases, or you've seen on TV legal cases, or what they have in America, suits, or whatever it happens to be, these sort of legal things, right? We know there is there's the judge, then you have the two advocates, the prosecutor and the defense lawyer. You have the stenographer, that's the person taking taking notes on what's being said. You've got the jury sitting there. And the way things work, I don't know which countries you come from, the way things work in America for sure, and also in England, is that they will often, interesting, where is here, Joan? They will often, Netherlands, okay. They will often, the judge will stop the lawyers from bringing up previous convictions or previous things that this person has done wrong, because they want the jury to judge this case on its merit and not from anything that happened before, okay? But nevertheless, we all know that some lawyers will try and squeeze in some information in their questioning. And then when that happens, the other lawyer jumps up and says, objection. And the judge says, sustained, because it's a good objection. He'll then turn to the stenographer saying, strike it from the record. And then he'll turn to the jury, for those who have juries, he'll turn to the jury and he will say, forget you ever heard that. And that is completely absurd. Because what do you mean, forget that you ever heard it? You're not going to forget that you heard it. It's already seeped in. So this is number one. The first reason that you're not allowed to listen to Lashon Hara, even if you know that you're not going to believe it, is that you may not believe it, but it will still get at you. It will still seep in, pull you away from the moral position or what you believe in and affect you in some way. That's the first reason. The second reason I called fence. Now, if any of you have taken a role in stealing in your life, stealing objects or being part of a heist, you will know that there's no point in stealing objects unless you have a place where you can transfer that object into cash, right? Now, that thing in English is called a fence. It will normally be somebody who has what looks like a legitimate business, a second-hand shop, an antique shop, a pawn shop, something like that, where it would be likely that they would have objects like this in the shop. And then if you've stolen something, you then go through the back door, you exchange it for cash, and then the guy sells it. If you were to sell it yourself, the police would be on top of you straight away, because where did you get this thing from and why are you suddenly selling it? Perhaps things have changed a little bit since eBay came along, but that's the general concept. Without the fence, that's called a fence, not a fence. It's just the name for somebody like that. Without the fence, nobody would steal, because what's the point of stealing if you can't transfer it into cash? So when I say fence, I mean the listener is enabling the speaker to speak. If you decided not to listen, there would be less speaking. If everybody decided not to listen, there'd be no speaking. So the listener enables and encourages the person to speak. They may not be doing the speaking themselves, but they're doing something that causes more negative speech to go on in the world. And the final thing, the third reason why you're not allowed to listen, even if you have no reason to believe it, even if you're not planning this, is the word gladiator. Now, the reason why I say gladiator is because back in the Roman circus, thousands of people used to gather together for their own entertainment to cheer on. I heard that they've just, or they're about to, I don't know where they're up to, have made a redo of the Gladiator movie or Gladiator 2. I don't know where they're up to with it, but I've heard that this is coming out. So the Roman circus, back then, thousands of people would gather together to cheer on while two people who were normally slaves and being forced to do this against their will, watch them fight to the death. Every time a limb was chopped off and blood was spurting everywhere, everybody cheered, "Hey, well done!" Yeah, and at the end, when one of them gets the other one on the thing with the trident and is about to kill him, they turn to the audience and they either go like this or like this, right? To get the person to decide whether the person should live or die, normally depending on whether he fought bravely or not. People used to go for their entertainment to watch other people being ripped apart. And it wasn't just, by the way, it wasn't just in the Roman circus. It was throughout the Middle Ages. The public executions were family entertainment. The family would come together, buy some toffee apples on the way, set up a nice picnic basket with a picnic towel. They'd sit there, they'd listen to the brave speech of the person who's about to be executed. They'd say, "Oh, I'm so brave." And then the axe would come down and they'd walk home and say, "Oh, what a wonderful day it was. Wasn't he brave?" And perhaps for the moment, we don't have that. We do have people who fight each other for entertainment, but at least they're being paid and they're there willingly. Perhaps nowadays we don't have such a thing. We don't have people ripping each other physically apart for others' entertainment, but we do have people who rip each other apart emotionally. Emotionally, people rip each other apart emotionally just for other people's entertainment. The gossip industry is a massive billion-dollar industry, multi-billion-dollar industry that's only growing. And look at us. We're getting our entertainment from seeing somebody else ripped apart. So for these three very, very logical reasons, we are not supposed to be turning our ears to listen. So I hear you asking me, okay, very nice. But what do you want from me? It's one thing to cover my mouth. I can cover my own mouth. I can't cover somebody else's mouth. What should I do? How am I supposed to deal with such interaction? Right? Very, very, very difficult. How are you supposed to deal with it? So there's a few different insights I want to share. Most people do not like being told that they're doing something wrong. I don't know if you've ever tried this. I don't know if you've ever been put your hand up if you've ever been out evangelizing or trying to get people to behave in a nice way or anything like that. In general, I found that it just gets the wrong pushback. Often, if you try and tell somebody, "Oh, don't speak negatively about others," all you do is compound the problem, and they lay in even harder, pushing like, "What are you talking about? If you knew what I knew," and they lay in there. Or, "Last week I heard you speaking badly about others. Who do you think you are to tell me what to do?" And it all explodes. But I have to say, if you have a good relationship with somebody and you can do it in a gentle, loving, non-judgmental way, sure. You can say something like, "I prefer not to speak about people," or please excuse me, it's not good for my mental health to speak about other people in a negative way. If you can find some way of saying that in a way that it will be heard, that's great. That's really, really good. I found that in most situations, unless it is somebody who is working with me on this topic, or I know is working on this topic and would be grateful to have it pointed out to them, in most cases, they just think you're holier than thou, and it's just explosive. It's just explosive. So what should you do? I don't know if I told you this. I don't know if anybody asked a question. I told you this. Did I tell you about the fingers and the ears? Did we talk about that? The sages tell us that God made our fingers long and thin. Why? I mean, they could have been anything. God could have made our fingers like a Swiss Army knife. We could have had a fork and a knife and a eyebrow tweezer and so we could have lots of different things on our fingers. Wouldn't that be great? Instead, he made them long and thin. Why? So you could take your fingers and you could do this. So is that what you're supposed to do? Is that what you're supposed to do when somebody says something negative? You're supposed to go, no, I can't hear you. Right? Is that what you're supposed to do? I mean, in theory, by the way, I've been doing a non-scientific experiment for the last 12 years that I've been teaching this stuff. I have never once, please prove me wrong, I have never once found a person whose finger does not perfectly snugly fit their own ear hole. Now, I have found people whose finger doesn't fit somebody else's ear hole. So, for example, I have short, fat fingers and a massive ear hole that fits perfectly. My wife has very, very dainty, long fingers with tiny ear holes. And with her permission, I once tried to get my finger. I couldn't fit it in because my finger's not supposed to go in her ear hole. More than that, kids, as they grow up, you will find that their fingers and their ear holes grow together perfectly, in tandem. Now, if you can prove me wrong, please prove me wrong. I want you to give me somebody. I want you to find so far, I have not found anybody whose finger does not fit their ear hole. So prove me wrong if you can. But yeah, I mean, that makes sense. Put your fingers in here. Should you do that? And the answer is, yeah, you should if it will make things better. But trust me, it's not going to make things better. All that's going to happen is they're going to think you're rude and you're going to be the next subject of their negative speech, right? That's all that's going to happen. So I don't see this as a reasonable option. In theory, yeah. But in practice, I don't think it's going to work. So what should you do? What should you do? And the answer really, in most cases, is distraction. Distraction. Somebody comes along and starts speaking to you. Now, obviously, if you feel that they really need to speak this out, and I think in the previous class, we talked about the concept of Lashon Hara for a constructive purpose, didn't we? That was our last topic, Lashon Hara for a constructive purpose. One of those was when a person needs to speak out for their own emotional well-being. They're weighed down by something. You know, you need to lighten up the load. Obviously, if you can see somebody's coming to you for that support, don't shut them down. But you can normally tell when it's just a little bit of idle gossip. Just distract them. What I have found works, and if we were in a live class, I would literally do this because I do this with my class when I've got them. Somebody will be speaking and I ask them a question about them. They'll say something like, they'll ask me a question. I'll say, where did you get that necklace from? It's really lovely. And because I've asked them a question about something to do with them, they get completely derailed and they're not even aware that I've done it. And they start talking about the necklace. And if I can keep that going, normally what happens, if I can keep it going, normally what happens is whatever it was that they were telling me, which didn't really have real importance, it was just like a stopgap. Again, if it has real importance, you can normally tell there's something real here. They need to speak it out. But If it was just idle gossip, they normally forget about it, and they're very, very happy to talk about where they got the necklace and how much it was, and blah blah blah. And you can talk about, and they're already complimented by the fact that you saw something like, where did you get your hair done? Oh, you just reminded me of something, and you start talking about something else. And the worst that they'll think is you got ADHD. That's literally the worst they'll think. And you know what? Everybody's got ADHD nowadays, so it's not a problem. That's literally the worst they'll think. Or you can answer the phone. I've done this. I've answered my phone. Since most people have their phones on vibrate, nobody's got any idea. You just say, oh, hello, hello. Oh, yeah? Really? You'll have to excuse me. I've got to go. And you know what? It's true. You do have to go. The guy is feeding you something that you don't want to be fed. Oh, you'll tell me it's lying. Yeah, you're allowed to lie to get out of listening to Lashon Hara. That's the rule. Why? Because when it comes to lying, we talked about this in our very, very first class together. The concept of lying, as far as Judaism is concerned, is lying is not necessarily true or false. It's about what is right and wrong. Sometimes right is true and wrong is false. But sometimes what looks to be true, what looks to be true is actually wrong. And in such a situation, you have to stand up for what's right. And standing up for what's right is not listening to this gossip for no reason whatsoever. You can go to the bathroom. There are so many different options. Essentially, what I'm saying to you is this. When you answer the phone, it's become normalized in society. If you're in the middle of you're in the middle of speaking to somebody and suddenly your phone rings, yeah, you answer the phone, that's very rude. Imagine you're speaking to face to face and suddenly you put your hand in front of the person's face and you say, no, I'm speaking to this person instead. That's a rude thing. And yet it's become normalized in society. So you use anything, any rudeness that has become normalized in society, you do that. And that's how you get out of it. Now, I agree, you won't always get out of it. Sometimes it's difficult. Sometimes they're persistent. And it also takes practice to learn it's taken me years of practice to be able to do the distraction well. So the Rabbi Yisrael Meir Kagan says, he explains that if you've tried to get out of it and you cannot, and you didn't go there specifically to listen to Lashon Hara, it's not like a gathering of people who get together to listen to negative speech about others. The typical example of that is, I don't know if this actually happens, but I've seen on the screen that in some barbershops in the States, old men gather just to natter. Is that true? Some hairdressers, women, older women just gather, they're not having their hair done. They're just there to get the latest stuff. That would be called gathering together just to speak negatively. This doesn't work. You shouldn't have gone there in the first place to have that little natter to be part of that group. However, if you didn't go somewhere to speak Lashon Hara and this person is just being so persistent and you've tried to distract them and it's just not going anywhere, and you know that if you say something straight on and say that's negative speech, I don't want to hear, it's only going to make things worse. Says the Chafetz Chaim, this rabbi, you can listen, but you have to combat the three issues that we said right at the beginning. So let's remind ourselves what the three issues were. Number one, it's going to seep in and change your perspective. Number two, you're enabling or encouraging. And number three, you're getting your enjoyment. So he says, let's combat each one. You can listen. You can listen because there's no way out for you. But you've got to, as you listen, you've got to think really, really strongly. I don't believe this. I'm not going to let it affect me. Now, again, it may still affect you, but you're trying your best. Because if, as you're being told it, you've got that mindset, I don't believe this, and we're going to talk about how you don't believe things in a minute, right? If you've got that mindset, I don't believe this, I don't believe this, that will make it easier for you to make it not affect you. That's number one. Number two, don't show anything on your face. that encourages the person to speak. Don't smile, don't nod, definitely don't agree. You should keep your face stony cold. My rabbi, one of the senior rabbis in Jerusalem, when somebody comes and says some gossip to him, he makes a face as if he's been stabbed in the heart. It's like, and that often works. Now, I'm not saying you need to do that. He's a very great man. But at least keep your face stony cold. This person's telling you something that's going to affect you badly. You don't want to hear it. And finally, to combat the entertainment, don't feel any happiness inside you. It's going to change your perspective. Calvin, I'll address that soon. So these are the three things that a person must do to combat the three issues that we talked about at the beginning. How do you not believe? The truth is that even if you're being told for a purpose, you're not really supposed to believe what you're being told. You're allowed to take whatever precautions you need to take in case it's true. But to actually believe it outright, how you're not really supposed to. How do you not believe? So I'll tell you straight out, it's actually a mindset. It's a mindset in life. We have to realize that none of us are accurate with our words. Have you ever heard somebody say, I literally died? Have you ever heard that phrase? Now, if you've heard somebody say, I literally died, you are witnessing a miracle. Do you understand? This is the what's the words in English? How do you say that? The revivification of the dead. This is the end of times. Somebody's come alive again. Amazing. I literally died. Now they don't mean I literally died, even though they said I literally died, because we have not been trained to be careful with our words. We say things, we exaggerate, we make up stories. Do you know one of the most common things that you hear somebody say? You'll hear somebody telling a story as if it's them, as if it happened to them. Do you know what I'm talking about here? But really it wasn't them. It happened they heard it from somebody else who said it was them. But that person who said it was them, it didn't happen to them either. And sometimes you have to go back 20 people. You have to go back 20 steps before you actually find the person it happened to. And if you got to him, you'd find out that it actually didn't happen the way they said it at all. Yeah, I've appeared in a newspaper as quoted as saying something when I never, ever, ever gave that quote. When you read in the newspaper, you've got to understand most of that stuff, significant amount of that stuff may well be made up. People have agendas. People have biases. People see things through their own perspective. They may have misunderstood what they saw. This is so crucial. I've made many, many mistakes in my life because I overheard a conversation, thought I understood it, and thank God I did not repeat the information that I thought I heard, because if I had, I would have destroyed somebody's life. We have to understand that this is the reality of life. It is almost unheard of to find, including the greatest rabbis. And that's not an insult to the greatest rabbis, because if you go back 700 years ago, one of the greatest rabbis of that generation, 700 years ago, a rabbi known as by the acronym the Rosh, he wrote that nowadays nobody is accurate with their words. He said, things have changed. It used to be that you would find great people who were perfectly accurate with everything they said. But nowadays, we're talking about 700 years ago. The great rabbi of that generation already said it. So for me to say that great rabbis of this generation are not accurate with their words, I'm not adding, because we in Judaism believe that the further back you get, the closer you get to Mount Sinai and the giving of the Torah to the Jewish people, the greater the people are. And things are watered down and weakened over time. So if back then, 700 years ago, people were not accurate with their words, how much more so right now? So I'm not saying anything that is terrible. And if you hear something from me, you're not supposed to believe it. Oh, but I'm a rabbi. I've got white hair. Look, I must be great, right? No, because I have to admit that I'm not accurate all the time with my words. That is how you have to get into a mindset. Most of you do not look like you are teenagers, which means you have life experience. I am sure in your life experience, you can look back and you've been told something, and later you found out either it was completely true or you were only told one side of the story. And then when you heard the other side of the story, it was like a completely different story, right? I've been told that somebody got divorced, and then a week later, I saw them holding hands, walking down the street in a clearly affectionate manner and not divorced. Now, unless that was a massive turnaround, they got divorced and then remarried, and I don't know what's going on, but people hear things and they just repeat it, and it's so dangerous. And that's how you get into the mindset. The only time you're allowed to, according to Jewish law, the only time you're allowed to believe negative information about somebody that you've been told is if you have personal evidence, meaning you yourself have seen that person doing something very similar. So if somebody comes along and tells me that, choose a name that's not on here, Bob screamed at me in public and embarrassed me. And I myself have witnessed Bob do that several times. So then I'm allowed to believe that Bob did it again because I've seen it myself. Not that I've been told by a few people that Bob does it, because each one of those is just hearsay. I don't know that it's true. But if I myself have seen him behave in that way, and now you're telling me he's done that again, I'm allowed to believe it because I have personal evidence with my own eyes. But otherwise, I'm not allowed to believe it. If it's relevant, I have to act upon it in case it's true. If somebody comes along and tells me this person is dangerous, I'm not necessarily allowed to believe it 100%. But it could be true. Therefore, I have to take sensible protection. I have to take sensible protection in case it's true. But to believe 100% that it's true, then I'm not allowed to do. So this is a layout for how you deal with listening and believing. I just want to do a quick summary, and then I'll deal with Calvin's question and any other questions that people have. Okay, just a very quick summary of what we've said. According to Jewish law, and it applies to everybody, because this is a logical way of living a healthy, productive, happy life within society. According to Jewish law, you're not allowed to believe Lashon Hara if you're told it, and you're not even allowed to turn your ears to listen, even if you have no intention of believing it. Why are you not allowed to listen even if you have no intention of believing it? Number one, it will, even if you don't believe it, it will seep in and change your perspective whether you like it or not. Number two, you're enabling and encouraging the speaker to speak. And number three, you're getting your entertainment from somebody else being ripped apart. How do you get out of it? In theory, you could tell the person not to speak, but often that backfires. In theory, you could put your fingers in your ears, but that really will backfire. Instead, the best thing is to try and change the subject. I find that changing the subject by talking about something that is close to the person who's speaking is the best way, because they're very, very happy. They're very, very happy to talk about things, especially if you're complimenting them. If that doesn't work, you've tried distraction and you can't stop them from speaking, you're allowed to listen as long as you didn't go there to actually be part of a group of speaking negatively about other people. But you have to combat those three things we said at the beginning. Number one, really work hard on not letting it seep in and not believing it. Number two, show nothing on your face to encourage the person. Number three, get no entertainment inside. This is really not nice for you. This is really not a nice thing. It's like they're force feeding you something that's unhealthy for you. And how do you not believe? Because life experience has told us that people aren't accurate with their words. They missee, they misunderstand, they have bias. Sometimes people lie because they have an agenda. For all of those reasons, you don't believe unless you have your own personal evidence. However, if there are safety issues, and you need to understand that perhaps this is for your protection, you're allowed to act upon it in case it's true. That is a summary of everything we've talked about today.